Asset financier Mogo Kenya received a 1.3 billion Kenyan shilling loan from the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, that's the IDFC, to expand its electric vehicle financing portfolio. The funding will support Kenyans' green mobility initiatives by providing financing for zero-emission vehicles to businesses and individuals in the transportation sector. Betty Kitum had a sit-down with Thomas Sardinas, the CEO of Mogo Africa and Asia, to discuss what the fund means for uptake of e-mobility products in the region.
Hello and thank you for watching KBC Channel 1. It is now time for an interactive session. My name is Betty Kitum. We would like to discuss matters e-mobility. What is the uptake looking like? What is the private sector doing to ensure that this uptake is increased? And what does it mean, especially in terms of climate-related changes? And to have this conversation is Thomas Sardinas. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Eleving Vehicle Finance. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Betty, for having me.
Karibu sana. So maybe we can just start at the financing that was received recently by Mogo, which is your subsidiary. 1.3 billion Kenya shillings is not a small amount of money. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Please tell us, how is this going to change the landscape for Kenya?
The money that we received as a funding from DFC, American Development Financial Corporation, is fully dedicated to financing electric vehicles, electric boda in Kenya. So our belief is that in the next 2 years we will finance more than 10,000 electric bodas in Nairobi, Mombasa, coastal area, and hopefully in other cities around Kenya.
So when you look at the uptake of electric vehicles, automobiles for that matter, what is it that will influence someone's decision to go buy an electric vehicle or an electric bike as opposed to getting, you know, the normal fuel-run ones?
That's a very good question. What we learned from our customers, first, that they save on fuel. So electricity is cheaper than filling the petrol, and we've all seen how much the petrol prices can increase. That's one reason. Riders actually really like these bikes, electric bikes, because they're fast, they're very dynamic, and they're also quiet. Third reason is the climate change aspect. And last but not least, we believe that it's also good for the Kenyan economy, because whereas all the fuel is imported from Middle East and other countries, electricity is generated locally. So it's actually money staying in the country instead of paying for fuel.
Of course, Kenya's electricity, 85% of it is generated from renewable energy sources. Yes. So that is a very strong point, you know, to have an electric vehicle. But beyond having that electric vehicle, you need charging points. Yes. And all these other infrastructure that support that ecosystem. How do you think Kenya is doing, and what more can be done?
So I think there are a lot of companies coming into this space. Unfortunately, none of the big players that have been here historically have electric boda, but there are a lot of startups like Rome, Ampersand, Arkwright, and we partner with all of them, and we try to bring both electric bodas but also electric charging or battery swapping infrastructure into the country. And one thing that I didn't mention in my previous answer is that big benefit is that the rider can save about 150 to 200 shillings a day just on fuel and also on maintenance, because since there are these electric bikes, you don't need to change oil, you don't need to change filters, and that adds up over the lifetime of a bike, and that's a saving that stays in the boda rider's pocket.
So when you look at the infrastructure, of course this is not a job that will be done by one sector. It's government, it's private sector and development partners. What would you say that needs to be done to increase the uptake in terms of, people will tell you, I don't want an electric vehicle because I'm traveling a very long distance. How sure am I can get it charged in time, and also the charging period? So what can be done to improve those dynamics?
I think the industry has to come together, and the government. So of course, the industry needs support from the government. I think that's very clear, and also from Kenyan Power, because this is a new industry, it's growing, it's very hard for it to finance itself, and this is where we are coming in and helping it grow. But also number of swapping stations needs to grow. First of all, in metropolitan areas like Nairobi. So some of the brands already have 40, 50 swapping stations around Nairobi. This is quite significant presence. But at the same time, if you look at the on the map, you will still find some areas without swapping. I believe that will change in the next 2 years.
Which is a positive thing,
It's
and
very
hopefully it will
positive.
increase uptake. The biggest motivator to go the electric side is the sustainability of it. Of course, we know that the transport sector in Kenya is a very big contributor to the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions. So what needs to be done to ensure that more people, especially in the public transport sector, are taking up electric vehicles or electric bikes? Yeah.
So I think it's a mix of reasons, but we believe that border riders, if they see the value, and first and foremost, it needs to be saving for them, right? They need to bring more money home for themselves and for their families. I think the adoption will speed up. And to have that saving, a lot of things need to fall together. So one is, of course, some of the tax incentives that the government had and now are under question lately. Given the latest developments, it's also financing companies like ourselves offering better terms to to the riders who take electric vehicles. It's also the companies themselves offering good product that the riders would trust. So I think it's basically a combination of these things. But ultimately, if there is a saving, if the rider likes the bike, if he's confident that he can drive, that he will find a swapping station, they will change.
Right.
I'm confident in that.
Awesome. You mentioned the tax incentives just now, and I'm curious from a private sector player's perspective, what is your thought on the regulatory environment, policy and regulatory environment in Kenya around e-mobility?
So I think the administration has done a great job in bringing tax incentives for EVs. Unfortunately, the latest development and unfortunately for EV industry and the 2023 finance bill being challenged in court, it kind of raises questions if these incentives are still in place or not, and we're waiting to see that. And I think these are very critical for the industry, for the manufacturers and importers of EV bikes to see. And in terms of regulatory environment, we're regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya, and we follow the guidelines and regulation of CBK.
A lot of business persons complain of the unpredictability of the tax environment in Kenya, given that it changes every other year. What are your thoughts in terms of, or what would you tell government in terms of ensuring that the tax environment or the regulatory environment is predictable for business persons?
I think it has been a challenge, and I think the changes themselves, right? Would be good to know what the tax environment will be for the next 3 years or 5 years, and then we could plan accordingly. So I think a little bit of stability would be appreciated.
Right. Do you foresee a time when there will be more local manufacturing in terms of the automobile industry in Kenya, especially now that we are shifting to e-mobility?
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the policy of the government, is making sure that the new players that come in, that they have to do assembly and part of manufacturing in the country. And I think this is absolutely the right approach. It creates jobs. So I think all the three brands that we have here, they all do assembly or part of assembly in the country. And I think there will be more and more of that. Certain components, yes, they come from abroad, unfortunately, but I think this country has a lot of potential in building and manufacturing a lot of parts that go into the bike, from frames to seats to lights, etc.
When you look at the comparative, do electric vehicles or automobiles even have a competitive advantage in terms of pricing as compared to the fuel-run ones?
Unfortunately, now they're more expensive, and I think it has to do with scale. And as more and more will come, the price of the bike should drop.
And would local manufacturing help in reducing that price?
I believe so, yes.
All right. So as you look ahead, what are you looking to achieve in the maybe in the short term, next 5 years or so?
So we have a lot of interesting ideas how we can contribute because we operate also in petrol bike space, in the traditional bike space. We have branches around Kenya. We have over 40 locations. So some of the things where we can use our network and our infrastructure to support the industry and the development. One example is of the new product we're planning to launch is the trade-in model where our customers or customers from anyone will be able to come with their petrol bike and trade it in for the electric vehicle. And that would make it more affordable, because one of the challenges actually for the riders is at the moment is that if you're a good rider, you have your own bike. So if you want to switch to electric, what do you do with your petrol bike? And you have limited options, and most people to choose it, to give it to cousin, to brother, and basically to rent it out. But we will give an alternative to such customers of actually trading it in for electric vehicle. And we will take care of the old petrol bike.
Right. You not only operate in Kenya,
yes.
You're in the region as well as in other continents. So when we talk about the African continent, how would you compare Kenya's performance, especially in the kind of business that you're dealing in?
So we have border financing both in Kenya and Uganda. And Kenya is our largest market in the group. This is we've been very excited to be here. I think the last year has been a bit more challenging because of economy, and I think it was challenging for everyone, the whole population. Moving forward, we see great opportunities. So yes, some of the markets we operate in, including border, have been more stable, more predictable. But we look forward to grow even bigger and to launch additional products and to facilitate the financing of EV bikes and other bikes in the Kenyan market.
Right. One of the challenges that people are facing when they're being financed to
yes.
get such products is paying back.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are you seeing in terms of your numbers, in terms of people honoring their paying?
So it has improved lately a lot. We are also trying to be a bit more conservative in terms of whom we give the credit to, the financing facility. So that's very important, and we're learning, right? We're trying to do better and better on that. At the same time, we work very hard with customers who face challenges. So if you miss a payment, but the customer is communicating, he's answering the phone, we would always find a solution, and we understand that border riders live, hand to mouth, and they don't have a stable salary. They need to make money for themselves, and sometimes they have an issues, be it health problems or some other challenges. So we work very hard to make sure that we can support them as long as possible and give them a break if they need to.
Right. And do you do any sensitization programs, especially in terms of responsible borrowing and all that, to
yes.
just improve their financial responsibility? Yeah.
So we launched a financial literacy tool, and we do it around the world, where every Kenyan and people from other countries as well can assess their financial situation, right? You can. It's a very simple tool. It's very easy to use, but it helps you to calculate how much money you're getting, how much you're saving, how much you're putting for the worst case scenario. And if you're thinking about an investment or you're thinking about taking a loan, it also allows you to see, can you afford it? On top of that, we as a company, for every customer we finance, we also do that check, even though we're not required by law. But for 100% of customers that we finance, we also check their income or the income they report, and we check, can the customer afford to take a loan? And if we see that they don't, we reject those customers.
Right. And well, for the border business, how do you see the income that they report?
So Part of it is actually doing an interview with a customer and asking questions, but big part of it comes from M-Pesa.
Okay.
So we ask the riders themselves to sharing in their M-Pesa statement, and that is used as for credit scoring purposes. So we actually see that transactions, how much money coming into M-Pesa account, and that helps a lot for us to score the customer and identify the good profile customers that make reasonable income, that can afford to buy a new bike and pay back the loan for the bike, and have sufficient money left to provide for themselves and their families.
Definitely, that is very important. Let's talk about the startups ecosystem.
Yes.
We have seen a lot of funding coming into this region, yeah, over the past few years. Why is it attractive? Let's start there.
I can share how I fell in love with Kenya.
Sure thing.
I think the people are great. They're very entrepreneurial, hardworking. So I think that draws a lot of investments from abroad. It's also a regional center. But I think what was one of the key decision makers for us to invest in Kenya is I would say the technology and the infrastructure that's here. We just talked about M-Pesa. In our company, we don't use any cash. Everything, we disburse all the money either through bank or M-Pesa, we collect all the money from M-Pesa. So that type of technological advancement, and I think Kenya is leading in the region. And that helps a lot when you want to launch a new business. It's just easier to do. So I think that draws a lot of startups. If we're talking about the EV transition as well, a lot of companies come here because they believe that if you succeed in Nairobi, you can do it in Kampala and other places regionally. So, and it's just a great place to be.
It is a great place to be. We have seen a number of startups going down over the past few years, despite enormous funding that they have received.
Yes.
Are there any lessons you've learned, and maybe what are you doing to ensure that we don't, hear the same story about Mogo in the next few years?
Yeah, so I want to emphasize one thing that I think is a bit different with Mogo is that we're part of a big international group operating 16 countries around the world, and the group is doing very well. We're also operating as a public company, have quite a large bonds traded on Frankfurt Stock Exchange in Western Europe, etc. So we're very well capitalized as a group, and so that's one aspect. The second aspect, what we learned, and just looking at some of the competitors or other players, you need to find a profitable business model. I think that's the key. A lot of competitors, a lot of players in this market come with a little bit, I think it's profit first, impact second. When people who come in and start with impact as the key driver and profitability secondary, I think that's a recipe for failure. So we are very happy when we can create a positive impact on the society. But as a business, and this is sustainability aspect, we need to be profitable. We need to be a sustainable business as such.
Right.
And then we can do good at the same time.
Over a long period of time,
Over
right?
a long period of time.
Yeah, very important pointers there. So I think my next question would be about understanding the market that you're operating in. We have heard that some people are borrowing models from other markets and bringing them to Africa, and if you don't understand the market, that's what happens. So what would be your advice for people maybe who want to get into the startup industry? Yeah.
Oh, I've learned these lessons the hard way. I think you sometimes think that what works in one country will work in another, and then it's arrogance. You think you know better, and you don't. I think the biggest advice I can give, especially on the product fit, listen to local people. Don't, we're talking about electric bikes. Don't design a bike, a European or somebody wants to drive or ride. You need to do it with the local border rider, because he knows better. And I think that applies to any product we talk about, and including financial services, because otherwise you can be more efficient, you can bring some methods of working, some IT systems, some tools that from other markets, but the product fit, I think you need to actually talk to your customers here and see how the people live here and listen to them.
Listen to the local person.
Absolutely.
And localize your product.
Absolutely.
That is the message. So as we come to a close of the conversation, what would be your take in terms of the future of e-mobility in this country?
I think it has an amazing future. I strongly believe that it's only the beginning. So the ride might be bumpy. We might not see electric vehicles deployed as fast as we would like to. But I think that within next 3-5 years, you will see thousands and thousands of electric vehicles in Nairobi, in coastal region, and probably in other towns or cities across Kenya. And this will bring good benefits, big savings for the riders, cleaner air, but also good for the economy as the cost of electricity or the charging is actually the money coming back and staying in Kenyan economy rather than leaving to the Middle East.
Right. Your closing remarks?
I appreciate the time and the opportunity, and I hope next time we will meet on, riding 2 electric borders together and enjoying the quiet ride.
I first need to learn how to ride a bike for that.
It's not that hard.
Awesome. Thank you very much for
Thank you so
joining us.
much.
Asante sana. Well, that is Thomas Sudnias. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Eleving Vehicle Finance, whose subsidiary here in Kenya is Mogo. And being that they have received that 1.3 billion shillings financing from the International Development Corporation, Development Finance Corporation, he says that it will be used to ensure that e-mobility uptake is improved in the country and, of course, in the region. That is a conversation that we've been having. My name is Betty Kiptum. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Bye-bye.